right, the price calculator is at azure.microsoft.com/country pricing, price and calculator. When you get into this calculator, basically you need to pick out bins of capability to put on the shelf, and then you're going to go in and configure those. So, our brief example here is I am going to build a pair of domain controllers and a couple of additional servers along with storage, backup, and an MPLS network connection to connect this through FiOS or ComServe up directly into the Azure cloud so you can expand bandwidth as you need it. This is an optional thing. It gives you a very low latency, high-speed connection directly into Microsoft's data center. I'm going to put it at the end so you don't have to, you can just drop it off if you need to. I just want to explain all the options that you have available to you. So we're going to click on Add Items, and we're going to start out by clicking on Compute to add our virtual machines. The first one I'm going to add is a virtual machine scale set that we're going to use for our domain controllers. So I'm going to click on that once. Then I'm going to add a couple of more machines. So I'm going to click on virtual machine again. And again, and these are just going to be examples of other virtual machines that we're going to put in our environment, like that ATA server, for example, if you want to add that. Next, I'm going to configure storage. And in storage, I have a couple of different types of storage that I can add. So I'm going to click storage once to add some high-speed SSD disk, just so you can get an example of what these kind of charges are to add high-speed storage. You get a lot bigger bang for your buck with high-speed SSD storage than you do for adding more CPU and memory in a lot of cases. Then I'm just going to do an example of backup, which will be backing up this whole environment, so you really don't need to add another Veeam server into this. You can do away with that and all the storage that associates with that. Now I'm going to go to networking, and I am going to add a VPN network gateway, and at the very bottom, I'm going to add the ExpressRoute connection to connect directly to Verizon, FiOS, or Comcast. So now that I've grabbed all these bins off the shelf and put them next to my workbench, I'm going to close this and start configuring things. The first thing I'm going to configure, and where are you guys located again?
We're in Rockville, Maryland.
All right, so I am going to go to the East U.S. data center to build these resources. And for my Active Directory controller, I'm going to use one of the brand new low-cost A2 underscore V2 machines. You may be able to get away with a smaller one. I have quite a few universities that have a couple of thousand users that have 1-core, 2-gig machines that are running their AD. So I'm going to leave it at the more expensive one here just for this example. So you get your worst case scenario in here. And I can change this to my AD controllers. And I'm going to have 2 of those. Next, I'm going to go back again to East US, and I am going to select, again, this time a SQL server, which gets embedded with SQL licenses. If you need it an always-on cluster, I would go with Enterprise. Otherwise, I would go with just a standard SQL server, and this includes the cost of the SQL license and any SQL cows that you would go along with it. I'd scroll down, and that I would use for a school your size, probably a D12. A little more cores on it, decent amount of memory, and some disk. There is an option here for managed disks. Managed disks are a brand new series of disks that allow you to take snapshots on them. There are some conditions that go along with that. They have to be predetermined size, and that's as far as my education has taken me on that. So stay tuned. I'll give you an update on managed disks. And now let's say we want to add a Linux server into the mix. And that, I'm going to use my scroll down, and for my Linux servers, I'm going to stick with that same series of boxes, but I'm going to use a little smaller box. I'm going to use 2 cores, 7 gigs of memory on this box. And let's say I want 4 of those servers. So now I have a couple of different type servers in my mix here. Now I'm going to add storage. And the first thing I'm going to add storage for is all the SAN disks. And you do this from a quoting purposes as a pool that you can assign. As Paul mentioned before, this is thin provisioned. So even if you put 20 terabytes into here and you only fill up 5 terabytes, that's all you're going to get billed for. Now, we have our choice between locally redundant storage, which is 3 copies of that disk in one data center, or geographically redundant storage, which is those 3 disks replicated to a data center at least 400 miles away, geographically dispersed. If you need a third site for your data, you can do a read access geographically redundant storage to give you copies 7 through 9. In this particular case, we're going to leave it at locally redundant storage, and we're going to put, between all these servers, 5 terabytes worth of disk on there. Remember, this is usable disk. Storage transactions are very minor. If you have up over 10 terabytes worth of storage and doing a lot of SQL databases and a lot of access in and out of this system, you may do a lot of transactions. So even a million transactions is $3. I'll add a couple more zeros in here. That's a lot of transactions. Most of the charges I see for anyone under 10 terabytes are less than $10. 10 to 30 terabytes, it's in the $25 range per month. I typically have been leaving off this figure altogether, because in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty negligible. All right, so I have 5 terabytes of data, and I have 2 domain controllers, a SQL server, so that's 3, and I've added 4 more servers. I have 7 servers, 7 instances for my backup, and I am simply going to divide my 5 terabytes by 7 servers and put, round it off, 700 and 15 gigabytes per server. Your smaller servers will cost less, your larger servers will cost more. This is a nice average. And my backup, I want to change to geographically redundant storage. So I have it in my primary location, and it's automatically replicated off to my backup storage location. Next is the VPNs. VPNs are rated by the hour. 744 hours, as you saw before, is nothing more than 31 days times 24 hours in a day. We have our choice of what type of gateways that we can use in our environment. A basic gateway is one site to site with up to 128 point to sites. That's your laptop, your tablet VPNing into the environment. Standard is up to 10 site to sites. High performance is up to 30 site to sites. Now, if we go ultra high performance, which allows us to do an MPLS connection into the cloud, we can get near local performance. And that we can do an unlimited plan by your bandwidth. And for your school, how much bandwidth are you getting today?
We've got 300 up, 300 down.
Okay. So let's say we're going to make this 500. This would be a very high speed, low latency link directly into the Azure data center from your environment. This is premium. This is everything you would need. And because it's an unlimited data plan, I believe you do not need to add any VPN charges. If you did, I calculate VPN charges based on the full amount of data, and I estimated at about 20% of your full data will get downloaded at some point in time during the month. Again, this is a metered figure, so in your case, that would be a terabyte. That would be just under $100 a month. Now, I spoke to you about adding premium storage. One of the things I would do for especially things like SQL databases is to add the option of high-speed premium storage, SSD storage. And SSD storage you add by the unit, by the disk that is essentially yours. And if you're doing it for your database and it's a large database, let's say you have all your databases running on that same server, I'd put a terabyte drive on there for an additional $130 a month. And I'll call this optional SSD for SQL. Support options. If you would like to contact Microsoft directly, as opposed to going through Synix as your second call support, you guys would be first call handling most of the items. We would be second call and escalating up to Microsoft. That is included with the CSP subscriptions that we can add right onto your Office subscription. If you want to talk directly, you have your choice between developers, which is just email support, does not have any critical incident report, or standard, or professional. Just faster response times. I'm going to leave this at standard for now. Let me stop here. Does anyone have any questions on what we have configured here? And I'll go in and change some of these titles.
No, I think it's been really clear so far. Thanks. And my understanding is if for some reason if you've got a machine sitting there, like as I mentioned, we've got a hybrid configuration for our Exchange server, but our Exchange locally, the on-premise one, is off most of the time. That sits there, but actually doesn't cost any money. Is that correct?
Correct. As long as it's off, it doesn't. It costs you the cost of disk. Now, one of the things I really don't like about this cost calculator, and I've been harassing Microsoft about this, is it's really hard to save this and go back and edit it. But what you can do is export these estimates, do a save as, which is my methodology. I give it a quick designation, and I open up the cost estimate on what we just configured. So basically for $81,000 a year at list price, you have a complete data center with a couple of different domain controllers in it, a nice high-end SQL server, another 4 Linux boxes, 5 terabytes of storage, complete backup, very high performance network going in and out of there, some high-speed premium storage, support, battery backup, power generators, multiple disaster failover sites.
So, Joe, I don't know if this is a question for you or from Donnie from DSR, but you mentioned that these pricing then gets pulled off if we were using the CSP, is that correct? For the discount value is pulled to that. Could you talk a little bit about how that works? And
this is Paul. I can help have that conversation. So let me ask this: what's the relationship between you and Donnie?
I'm the reseller and they're my customer.
Okay, so Donnie would bill you guys based on consumption. So we will provide Donnie and her company an invoice at the beginning of each month that will show usage by VM type, storage counts, all the things really that Joe's showing here. In addition to some other information, you'll have IOPS and things like that Microsoft provides us that we provide to Donnie.
And you pay for it after the fact. Whatever resources you use, whatever time they're up and running, you will get billed for that.
At the beginning of the conversation before we started recording, we were talking about something called a discount value.
Well, that's between us and Donnie.
Yeah. And that was more, I think, to go over purchasing Azure and Open, which is that easy pass. You put money in there first, and then it depletes the money, versus the CSP program where you get billed after the fact.
Okay, so this is pretty accurate, though, based on what we've configured in this calculator. This price on the right, $6,754.81, is what we would assume we were paying if we were using all of these servers, correct?
Correct. Yep. Now, in a 31-day month. In a 30-day month, you'll pay a little bit less than this. But yes, it's based on usage, like your electric bill or your water bill.
Okay, great. I think this is great for the recorded portion. Do you guys want to stop recording?